In this month's news, the issue of compensation for the wrongly convicted is back in the spotlight as Brian Buckle is once again denied compensation. Meanwhile, pressure is mounting to overhaul the controversial IPP sentence, with the UN calling for every remaining prisoner serving an IPP sentence to be resentenced. And could a new book re-examining the Lucy Letby case prove pivotal to her exoneration, as its author suggests? Join us as we explore these stories and more.
Welcome to Spoken Injustice, where we put the criminal justice system in the dock. Today we start our new session with a devastating update. You may have already heard that Brian Buckle has been denied compensation for a second time. You may remember Brian sharing his story at International Falsely Accused Day 2024 after his first compensation claim was rejected.
We applied for compensation on the 5th of June. I had a letter back from the Ministry of Justice, and this is the actual letter. I have concluded that you do not meet the statutory test for compensation set out in section 133 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988. However, I do not consider that the effect of the newly discovered fact in your case demonstrates beyond reasonable doubt that you did not commit the offences for which you were convicted. But then on the next paragraph, they turn around and they say, you are presumed to be and remain innocent of the charges brought against you.
Shame, shame, shame.
So my question is to the Ministry of Justice and to Keir Starmer, which one is it? Am I still guilty or am I innocent? Are 3 High Court judges wrong? Are 12 jury who found me innocent after hearing the truth wrong?
Thanks to the tireless efforts of his MP Ben Lake and his barrister Stephen Bullock AC, his case was taken to Parliament. On 19th of March 2025, it was the subject of a Westminster Hall debate led by Ben Lake, which we covered in this video. Following that debate, Brian spoke with great hope at International Falsely Accused Day last year when he told us that Alex Davies-Jones had promised his case will be looked at again.
And we've had 3 meetings now in Westminster. We've had a Westminster debate where Alex Davies-Jones, the Minister for Victims, she promised me that she would have a meeting with me. We had that meeting about 3 months ago. Myself, Mr. Vallow, my family and Alex Davies-Jones. And then she promised me 2 things, which one was that she was going to look into my compensation, and the second one was that she was going to get my trust back into the justice system, which is going to be quite a hard thing for her to do. But she did make me 2 promises. That was on a Tuesday, and then on the Wednesday, the Prime Minister's question time, he then live in Parliament said my case was a grave miscarriage of justice. 2 days later, I had a letter from the government saying that they're reopening my compensation claim. So,
for the first time in a long while, there was real hope. Public support continued to grow, with a petition supporting Brian's claim attracting more than 40,000 signatures. But on the 8th of July this year, those hopes were dashed. The Ministry of Justice confirmed that Brian's compensation claim had once again been refused. The decision was based on the almost impossible legal test contained in section 133 1ZA of the Criminal Justice Act 1988, as we have highlighted in many videos and more recently in this video. Under this law, it is not enough for someone to have their conviction overturned or even to be found not guilty by a unanimous jury, as Brian was at his retrial. Instead, they must go further and prove that they did not commit the offence at all, a burden many, including the Law Commission, consider fundamentally unjust. Following the news, I connected with Brian and Elaine, and Elaine, Brian's wife, told me that although the decision itself did not come as a surprise, particularly given that by the end both Alex Davis-Jones and Keir Starmer, for obvious reason, were no longer involved, the second rejection was still a devastating blow. She described the language used in the refusal letter, which Ben Lake had characterised as Orwellian, as disgusting. As Elaine put it, it leaves one wondering what more a person must do to prove their innocence when, during the retrial, the alleged victim herself accepted that Brian had not been involved in the offence. Brian's case highlights why so many campaigners are calling for this law to be changed. We once again urge you to support Appeal's campaign, which is backed by Brian and many others, including us, to repeal this deeply unfair provision and ensure that any reform is applied retrospectively so those already affected are not left behind. You'll find a link to Appeal's campaign in the description below. Take a moment to read it and take action. Staying with the theme of fighting injustice, we turn now to the ongoing campaign to end the legacy of imprisonment for public protection, or IPP sentences. If you are unfamiliar with IPP or would like a refresher on how this abolished sentence continues to affect thousands of people and their families, please refer to this video, which we released almost a year ago and which covers the history of the sentence, why it was abolished, and why so many people remain trapped by it today. On the 15th of July, campaigners gathered outside the Ministry of Justice to once again demand action for those still serving IPP sentences. Their protest coincided with a significant intervention from the United Nations, where independent human rights experts renewed their call for the UK government to carry out an urgent review of every remaining IPP case and introduce a resentencing exercise for those still affected. The experts warned that continued failure to address the issue is not simply a policy concern, but a human rights one. Although IPP sentences were abolished in 2012 because they were widely recognised as fundamentally flawed, thousands of people remain subject to them today. Many have served years and in some cases decades longer than the minimum term originally set by the sentencing court. According to the UN experts, almost every unreleased IPP prisoner has now served beyond their original tariff, with nearly 3/4 having spent more than 10 additional years in custody, beyond the punishment the court initially considered proportionate. One such case was that of Thomas White, who received an IPP sentence after stealing a mobile phone. During this time in prison, his mental health deteriorated so severely that he has self-harmed by setting himself alight, becoming one of the most striking examples of the devastating psychological impact these sentences can have. The experts also expressed particular concern about the number of IPP prisoners living with disabilities, neurodivergent conditions, acquired brain injuries, serious mental illness, or significant childhood trauma. They questioned whether many of these vulnerabilities were ever properly recognized during sentencing and whether the prison and parole systems have adequately supported those affected. At the heart of the UN's criticism is a simple principle. Imprisonment should have a clear path towards rehabilitation and eventual reintegration into society. When people are left serving an indeterminate sentence without a realistic route to release, the result is not only uncertainty, but a profound psychological harm that undermines the very purpose of the justice system. The experts have once again urged the government to undertake a comprehensive resentencing exercise for anyone still serving an IPP sentence. If that cannot be achieved immediately, they say the government should, at the very least, establish clear criteria to begin resentencing those most seriously affected as a first step. Their message is unequivocal. The UK has a duty to uphold the dignity and rights of everyone in its custody, and this discredited sentencing regime cannot be allowed to continue indefinitely. We support those calls unconditionally. After more than a decade since IPP sentences were abolished, it is long past time for meaningful action to ensure that those still trapped under this failed system receive the justice they deserve. And now turning to one of the most debated criminal cases in recent British history. Of course, I'm talking of the case of Lucy Letby. Barbara and I had the privilege of attending the launch of Chris Morris's long-awaited book, Reasonable Doubt, examining the case of Lucy Letby, held at Waterstones on Tottenham Court Road in London on the 9th of July 2026. For those of you who don't know, Chris is a freelance writer, author and ghostwriter with more than a decade of experience. He is also the creator of the Lucy Letby Analysis YouTube channel and podcast, where he has spent the last few years carefully examining the evidence, media coverage, and legal proceedings surrounding the case. Some of you may also have seen that I had the pleasure of appearing as a guest on his channel. The book launch brought together an impressive group of journalists, academics, legal and medical professionals, and campaigners who have publicly called for the evidence in the Lucy Letby case to be independently re-examined. It was a rare opportunity to meet many of the people whose research and expertise have helped shape the growing debate surrounding the convictions. Amongst those in attendance was Professor Hutton, who has played a significant role in highlighting concerns about the statistical evidence presented during the trial. She very kindly took the time to speak to me personally about why she believes the statistical interpretation deserves much closer scrutiny and how misunderstandings of complex data can have profound consequences in criminal proceedings. Also present was investigative journalist Nick Wallace, whose meticulous reporting on the Post Office Horizon scandal helped expose one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in British legal history. It was particularly fitting to see him there, as Reasonable Doubt has been published by Bath Publishing, the same publisher behind Nick's acclaimed work on the Post Office scandal, led by David Chaplin and Helen Lacey. The evening featured a lively question and answer session, expertly hosted by John Sweeney.
First of all, let's just say a great big thank you to Waterstones and in particular their air conditioning.
Yes.
We're here to fight a monstrous injustice. And this man has documented it.
Chris spoke candidly about what first drew him to the Lucy Letby case and how what began as a curiosity developed into years of meticulous research, ultimately culminating in this book. Rather than seeking to sensationalize the story, Chris explained that his aim has always been to encourage people to examine the evidence critically and to ask whether the conclusions reached truly withstand scrutiny. The full event is available on the Lucy Letby Analysis YouTube channel, and Chris has also written an accompanying article in the Daily Skeptic. We have linked both in the description below. What resonated with me most, however, was Chris's closing message. He reminds readers that this story is about far more than one individual or one high-profile case. At its heart is a simple but sobering truth. It could happen to you. That is a message we share. It is also why we created Spoken Injustice. Our mission has always been to humanize the criminal justice system, to amplify the voices of those affected by miscarriages of justice, and to remind people that the safeguards of protecting the innocent exist for every one of us. If the justice system can fail one person, it can fail anyone. Finally, a message for our Spoken Injustice community regarding a temporary update, to our program over the next 2 weeks. I will be away during this period and I will not have access to my video editing tools. And as a result, I won't be able to produce or edit new videos. However, I will continue to share short clips and highlights from previous content to keep the conversation going and maintain awareness of the key issues currently being debated by those who genuinely care about the criminal justice system and are committed to seeing justice prevail. Thank you for your understanding, your patience, and your continued support. Your encouragement and engagement mean a great deal to us, and we truly appreciate you being part of our community. We look forward to returning and continuing these important conversations with you. As usual, don't forget to like and share this video and to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. And of course, join us again as we sit and rise in this unique trial.